Hello again, folks. If you're a regular to my YouTube videos, you probably won't find this video that interesting, but it might be if you're a cyclist. I decided to do this little video because I thought it might be of help to somebody who's got a similar problem with a Brooks leather saddle. Now, if you're into cycling, you'll know about Brooks. This is a Brooks leather saddle, probably one of the finest saddles you can buy. They're still made in England and they're prized by people. This is the Brooks original B17, which has been in production for many years. They are beautiful saddles, really comfortable, but when they're new, they are hard work. You've got to wear them in, run them in, so to speak, by having your bottom on them for quite a few miles. And people will say, well, if you've got a fault on the saddle, just sling it away and buy a new one. Well, it's not quite that simple. For starters, they're quite expensive. They range from sort of £75 to £95 for this particular model. That isn't the only factor. Also, as I've mentioned before, they do need running in. And when they're new, they are very hard. They're real leather, and it's quite thick leather, as you can see. And they are as hard as iron to start with. But once you run them in, they are really comfortable and probably the best saddle you can get. Much more comfortable than some of these modern ones with gel seats in and that. They're supposed to be comfortable, but they do need wearing in. And some people suggest it can take up to 1,000 miles on the bike before they're really comfortable. So that's the reason generally you try and keep the same saddle. This saddle, I've had this since 1980 on my Dawes Galaxy, Super Galaxy. And I move it from bike to bike because I particularly like it because it's run in. There's another one here. I've got several of these. The problem is they do go wrong sometimes, in the sense that the bolt, this bolt in the tensioning bolt here that tensions the leather on the top, breaks, which is why there isn't one on here. I was out yesterday on a ride and we'd done about 40 miles and suddenly the bolt snapped in the front here, and what it means is you've got no support under here. It's all squashy and it's most uncomfortable, whereas this one, as you can see, is quite hard. You've got two hard springs here, and this nose bolt, or tensioning pin as they call it, actually snaps. There isn't one in there. Now I'll show you here what they look like. This is a broken one, and you can see by the number I've got here, it's quite a regular occurrence. I've had 3 of these break over the years, and they're not easy to get. They're not easy to obtain. I'll just move the camera in a bit so you can get a, hopefully, so you can get a better, closer look at the bolts. It's basically just a threaded rod with a radiused out end, and then there's a little pin on the end there which locates it into the nose piece on the front of the saddle. There are different length ones for different types of saddles, but they're basically interchangeable. Now they aren't easy to obtain. You can buy them, Brooks lists them, but you know, they're probably £4 or £5, and you've got to pay a hefty amount for postage, I suppose. But if you can get them, obviously the easiest way is to buy a new pin and put it in, and then you've got a good saddle again. The problem is, it's not just as simple as that, because although it looks easy to do, and this one I've replaced, it isn't that easy actually. Getting this bolt in here and located can be quite difficult. This particular saddle I've got here, an older one, the leather is more supple, and I did manage to get that one in quite easily. But this one, the spring-in is different somehow, and it's very difficult getting that bolt into the end. The problem is, I'll just move the camera a bit so you can see the end of the saddle. You see there's a little hole in the front there, a locating hole, and basically this end of the pin, it fits through there like so it locates in the hole to stop it jumping out or moving. Without that, you might find if you went over a bump or something, it might fly out. I've never had it happen, but because if you've got to have that little bump that keeps it in place, and that little knobbler piece on the end there stops it turning when you're adjusting. Oh, you can't see it, can you? There's a little piece on there which stops the thing turning when you're trying to adjust it. They're a fiddle to adjust anyway, but they can be difficult to get in there. Now obviously if you can get a new pin and you can get it in, that's the solution. For £5 or £6 you've got the job back to normal. But as I say, that this spring is very springy metal, and it's very hard to bend or anything to get it in. And simply what you do, you put this piece, this locates in here, It looks so easy to do. People would laugh. They think, well, of course you can get that in. It's easy. But that's how it goes. And then this rod has to, I haven't got a new one yet for this, but I'm going to show another one. That has to fit in there with a nut and poke under there. But what I've done, as an experiment, while I'm waiting for one, I thought I'd try and make something myself. That one's okay. I put one in there and I've managed to tighten that. This one is a right devil. It will not go in. And I know people, I've read on the internet of people who spent 5 hours trying to get this damn thing in here. And it can be really, really difficult. There must be a knack to it. I don't know what it is, but there must be a knack. Brooks apparently have got a special hydraulic stretching machine, and it stretches the leather so that it's easy to put it in. Obviously they would in the factory. But what I'm going to do, as you can see, this is what happens to the bolt. They just snap. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to show you a way I've found of doing it. It's not the best way, obviously, but I think it'll work. All I've done, I've got a piece of screwed rod like this. This is ordinary 8mm screwed rod. If you haven't got any screwed rod, and you can't get any, or you don't want to buy a great long length, just get an 8mm bolt and you can cut the head off. It'll do the same thing. So I've just taken a piece of that and I've cut it down to about 2.5 inches, which is about the right size to go in there. And then if you just smooth the end over, I've just ground the end, or you can file it if you haven't got a grindstone. Just file it nice and smooth and round, because you don't want it to catch on you. Then with a couple of 8mm nuts like this, you can actually get this in much easier than you could do with the original one. And all you do, you just poke the 2 nuts in like that and thread it there. You need that end to stick through the hole there. As I stress, this is a bit of what I call a bodge, but it does seem to work. So I just thought I'd show people. And then because you haven't got this captive nut thing, this is like it's got a special radiused out piece on here which fits in the hole. It allows you more movement on here to adjust this nut. So all you've got to do is allow enough at the end here to poke through the hole a little tiny bit. You don't want it much. Poke it through like that so it's located in the hole, and then you can tighten this nut up. And then if you've got, there is a Brooks special spanner, but obviously I haven't got one for this and it wouldn't fit this nut anyway, so I'm using some long nose pliers. And if you just tighten this nut up here like so, you'll find that you can tension the saddle nicely. I'll do a bit more. I hope you can see this. You don't want to do it too tight because you'll pull the rivets out. It's got to be a certain amount of tightness to support your body. But as you can see now, that's done the job. And if you look at the front, I'm going to move the camera in a bit. Hopefully. Just a minute. Where is it? There we go. You'll see that the actual bolt just sticks out through the hole. It isn't sticking out. It's basically flush with it. I don't know if you can see that. It's barely visible. It's just flush. Now that will do the job, and you can ride the bike, and it's back in use again, isn't it? You can adjust this nut and tighten it up as often as you like, and I reckon that's perfectly alright. I mean, it's not, obviously it's not as good as the original. Well, it might be, it might last longer for all I know, but it certainly does the job, and it'll get you going again, and it's saved the saddle, so why not? Now that's the simplest way of doing it. The way I'm going to do it, actually, I'm going to go a little bit further than this. I'm just going to take this off and just show you what I think I'm going to do. What I've just done, I think it's a simple solution, and it works. It seems to work fine. But I won't guarantee it because it's obviously not the proper thing, but it's worth a try if you're stuck, and it costs virtually nothing. As I say, all you need is a hacksaw, a couple of nuts and a bit of threaded rod, or a bolt. Just cut off a bolt or anything. There's always ways around these things. As I say, if you've got the proper thing, obviously that's the best way of doing it. But as I say, they are very awkward. I can't get it out now. I've done such a good job. Look, there you go. The advantage of my method with this piece of rod is it gives you more movement, because I know it sounds a bit silly, but this special nut, you see, it's different to a normal nut, because that is designed to go in this larger hole where the nut goes through, so that fits in there and it doesn't give you the movement, which is why it's very difficult to get it in there because of the springing in this. If you've tried doing this, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. If you haven't, you'll think he's a nutcase, it's easy to do. It isn't, it's very difficult on certain saddles. So that nut, the original nut, is very difficult, whereas that nut, because you haven't got that special captive nut, this has got more movement, so it allows you to bend it in there. Now over time maybe that will cause a problem, I don't know, but I'm going to give it a try anyway. But there is another way you can do it if you want to, and that's simply if you've got a tap like this. This is an 8mm tap. All you got to do is get this nut. I don't know what thread is on it, I don't know what thread Brooks use, but I've tried an imperial size one and I've tried metric and it doesn't seem to be either, so I don't know what that thread is. Somebody will probably know, but it's certainly not metric. So all I've done, I've got that nut, the original Brooks nut, I've put it in the vise, and using this tap I've just tapped the hole out to 8mm, which means now I can actually use this original Brooks nut on my piece of rodding nut. So now when I do the job, take the old nuts off, that will now fit. I hope you can see this, it's a bit tricky trying to show it on the camera. That will now fit in there, so I can now use my original nut on the front and the original Brooks nut there, but I think it's going to be difficult getting it in there, so I'm not going to do it on camera because there'll be a lot of swearing. The other thing I'm going to do, rather than just using, I mean it's perfectly alright to use an ordinary nut, I don't think it's going to move, but if you're not sure, you can always put a bit of Loctite or something on to stop it moving. But I think it'll probably be okay, and if you don't lock it on there you can adjust it later. What I'm going to do, instead of using that nut, I'm going to use one of these. This is a captive nut. As you can see, it's a little bit bigger because it's got that little end on with a bit of plastic in, which in effect locks it on there. So I think that if I take that one off, if I screw that one on there and turn it a few more times, that'll lock that on the front there, and it'll be basically very similar to what you've got on the end of there. I shall allow the bolt to stick out a little bit through the end, like this one, and I can't see it, and the rounded end will fit nicer in there, and I reckon that will do a decent job. Right, well, as I predicted, it doesn't work using the Brooks nut. As you can see here, I've put my locking nut on there, that's fine, and I've got the right amount of protrusion through the front there, but as soon as I put the Brooks original nut with a little collar that goes in the hole in, you can see the gap there. Well, I hope you can see it. That nut, it just will not go in that hole. Now you can't, this whole assembly here, this metal piece here, this yoke, needs to bend forward, but you can't bend it. It's too hard to bend and then you might break it. And it's also locked on, it won't move because the end of the bolt's sticking through and the springiness in here. And it's just that little bit out and it will not go in there. Now obviously there's a method of doing it. Yeah, I don't know what it is. Brooks probably got something in their factory, as I said, a gadget. But because this is pressing down on the nose piece, the metal piece inside there, it won't go down any further. And the only way to do it really would be to take all the rivets out, unrivet it and take it off and clip it in. I have done this one before once, but I remember it took me several hours of banging and crashing and swearing and cursing, and I used some mole grips in the end. I don't know how I did it, but I think I'm going to go back to my original method and not use the Brooks nut, just use my ordinary nuts. I can't see any harm in that at all. I can put a bigger washer behind it just to be on the safe side, and you could use a locking nut anyway, so it's not going to go anywhere. So what I'm going to do is go back to that, because I've not had much success with this one. I think it's peculiar to some certain saddles, because as I mentioned earlier, this particular saddle here, I took this one apart yesterday to take this out from another saddle and swap over, and I got that one in no trouble at all. I mean, it took me a few minutes to do that one. They're a fiddly thing, but I did that one quite easily. But this is my original saddle. It just will not go in with that Brooks nut. It's just a devil, that is. So I'm going to go back to my other method and try doing that, and we'll see what it's like when I've finished. Okay, so here's my final solution. A little piece of 8mm rod, about 2.5 inches long, just over 50mm. I've put a captive nut on the end, so that's not going anywhere, with just the right amount of protrusion to stick through the hole in the nose of the saddle. I've got an ordinary 8mm nut on there, and I've also got a fairly hefty washer. I thought I'd put that on just to make it easier to adjust. As I mentioned, I couldn't get the actual Brooks one in, so I'm going for this. Pop that in there like that. You'll see this is quite easy to do. You just pop that in through the hole there, because the nut's adjusted back. It's gone in perfect, look. And that will stick through the nose of the saddle just enough. It's not doing any harm there. It's just sort of flush with the front of the nose of the saddle, the metal piece. And then it's just a simple matter of doing that nut up. Now, Brooks do a special spanner to do their nut up. I haven't got one of those, and it's a fiddle to get in anyway, so I just use long nose pliers. And if you've got two pairs, you can hold the other end of the bolt with one pair of pliers, because obviously it's going to move. Hold that tight with one pair of pliers, and using the other pair you can just adjust this nut quite easily, like so, and just adjust it so you've got the right tension. Now, as far as I can see, this will do the job. I might be wrong. I might find when I ride the bike it'll squeak and rattle and God knows what, but I won't know till I've tried it. I can't see why it should do any harm. I've done that. I might have to do a bit more. It just stretches the leather, you see, with respect to this springiness in here, and makes for a comfortable ride. That looks fine to me. I'm going to tighten it just a little bit more. Brooks do recommend a particular adjustment on there. I think it's on their website in their FAQs, frequently asked questions. They mention the correct adjustment for it, how much give there should be, but I suppose it depends on the saddle and how old it is and everything. You don't want to do it too tight. If you tension it too much, what will happen? It'll rip the rivets out eventually. And this one's getting a bit older now. I think that's fine. Well, to me, that looks alright. As I say, don't take my word for it, I'm no expert on this, I've just bodged this together. It looks alright, as far as I know it'll be alright, but if it isn't, I'll make another video and come back and admit it. But I shan't know till I've rode the bike, so when I put it back on the bike and ride it, if you don't hear anything from me, you'll know it's okay. If it causes a problem, I'll make another video and I'll tell you what's happened. Anyway, I think that'll do for now. Brooks saddles, the best saddle you can buy, I think. Apart from the bolts that break. Bye!